Good morning. Welcome back to Coffee and Colorful Conversation. As you can see, my handsome guest is here with me, Mr. Joe Santy. I'm so excited to have him here today. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be for you. It's always a pleasure, Elaine, to be wherever you are.
Thank
Even
you.
when
This almost did not happen. My power went out this morning.
uh,
I was freaking out. My first freak out was, oh my gosh, the coffee machine can't work without power. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll just make tea. I'll boil water, make tea. Well, my new house is all electric, so I couldn't even make hot water or tea or anything. So I got in my car and I drove to the closest place for coffee, which was Dunkin' Donuts. The line, because the whole neighborhood is out at the same time, the line was wrapped around the building, sitting in line, waiting for my, drug of choice, my coffee. And I'm like, my neighbors probably all feel the same way that I do about their morning cup of coffee. So I'm in this big long line and I asked the girl, does it take a really long time to get one of those boxes of coffee so I can give my neighbors all coffee? So she's like, it takes a little longer, but just pull over and we'll bring it out to you. So I get the box of coffee. I come back. I walk over to my neighbors who I've never met. And I said, hi, we've never met. I moved in recently. I haven't had a chance to introduce myself. I figured you probably want a cup of coffee as much as I do right now. So I brought you coffee and I gave them the box and some cups and some stirrers and all the stuff. And they were like, oh my gosh, that is so nice. It's so nice to meet you and blah, blah, blah. And I walked in the house and my husband was looking out the window and he's like, who are you, Florida Elaine? Like, when would you ever? And I said, being a little bit older and being in a new community and forgetting what it's like when you don't know your neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have that neighbor looking out for you if you're away, to grab your mail, to make sure that nothing's wrong with your house, all those things. And it was just so perfect that it happened this morning, because doing a random act of kindness, sometimes you feel like, oh, people aren't even going to notice or care or whatever. It's not a big deal. Like, oh, I'm going to be in line longer. Oh, these people behind me are going to be bitching that I'm holding up the line. As soon as I left them with the coffee, they said, oh, the power company said 10:30. I'm like, great. I'm meeting with Joe at 10. I have no power. My computer. I'm like, am I going to drive to Starbucks and talk and do this in the middle of the Starbucks? So all this is going through my head. And I walk in my house and my microwave light is blinking. And I said, is our power on? He goes, it just went on. So when you think that those little acts of kindness don't do anything, it's all part of that universal you get when you give, whether it's expected in return or not. So such a great theme, because that's what I wanted to talk about with you. I wanted to share with people watching how you and I met. So guys, we all have those people in the industry that you see them in the magazines, you see them at the big hair shows. You're like, oh my gosh, you're pointing to them when they walk by to go to the restroom, and you're afraid to approach them. You think, oh my gosh, they have everybody approaching them. I want to take a picture, but I don't want to ask and all that. So I'm in an airport in Philadelphia airport. I was thinking about it last night, Joe, and my daughter was like 9 months old and she's 27. So this was literally 26 or 25 years ago. And I'm in the airport, and my girlfriend that I'm flying with is a white knuckle flyer. She is terrified to fly, loves to drink. So it doesn't matter if it's a 7 a.m. flight or a 10 p.m. flight. She's having cocktails before she gets on the plane. So we're sitting there, and I look up, and there's handsome Joe Santy getting on the plane, which was not surprising because we were headed to the Matrix show. Back in the Matrix Big Show days in Cleveland. So we're like, oh my gosh, that's Joe Santy. So of course, I was much younger then. I was in my 20s. I'm like, I'm not going to bother him. I'm not going to go say hi or whatever. So we get on the plane, and we're about 5 rows from Joe. And my nervous girlfriend is like talking, and the hands are flying, and she's real hyper, and she's bothering the stewardess for yet another Bloody Mary. And she's talking with her hands, and she spills the Bloody Mary, and it's all over me, all over her, in her purse, on the tray. And I gag at tomato juice. Like, I love tomatoes. I love tomato sauce, tomato juice. I'm like, oh my God, the smell. So we clean it all up. She gets another one, spills the second one. She's got white pants on. She gets up. She's in the aisle. She's sticking her butt in this older gentleman's face. The wife's like smacking him. She's causing total mayhem on this plane. And you had a seat next to you. And you looked over and you were like, waved over to her, like, come on, honey, come sit next to me. She's gonna kill you.
I'm
Come
no
sit
fool.
next
It
to
was a
me.
great butt. Go ahead.
She had a great butt and she's gorgeous. So both of you, she chatted your ear off the whole time. You were so gracious. You let her be, crazy and hyper, and you chatted the whole way. And you and I have been friends ever since. We got to the show. We saw each other a million times during the show. And what's even more crazy and special is that is the show that I was first introduced to who Dr. Lou was. And Dr. Lou was speaking at the show. So of course, in the evening dinner event, you and Lou were together and I made you introduce me to Lou. And now I've reached out because of you. I was able to reconnect with Lou and I'm going to have him on my podcast. So it's like the synchronicities. We're talking 25 years later. So when your spirit and your body moves you to go say hi to somebody, to call somebody, to introduce yourself to the neighbor that's another salon, do it. You have no idea where it's going to lead.
Listen, my whole life, Elaine, and actually I have to write that down. I spoke to Lou yesterday and I can't remember if he wanted your contact information or somebody else's. I got to call him when we get done. But my whole life has been about connection, because this is going to sound trite, but it's the truth. I've lived my whole life by God can do great things through the person who doesn't get the credit. You spoke earlier about how hidden things are. They're still hidden. The business model in the beauty industry has been broken for years. And, the dawn of people like yourself, Donna, Neil, Michael Cole, etc. It's tried to bring it more together as people get honest about the numbers and stuff. But until you make that connection and trust people, it doesn't get there. So that's been one of the drawbacks, which is why it was more important than ever to have that good connection with people. So you could actually put down your guard and say, hey, because your salon was in Conshohocken, if I remember right? Mm-hmm. So your salon was actually where my daughter grew up. It was around the corner from her, right? Was it Ridge Pike?
Sorry, lost my hearing.
That's all right. Was it Ridge Pike? I can't remember.
It was on Fayette Street, so it runs parallel to Ridge Pike.
There you go. Okay. So my bottom line for saying that is nowadays, and my whole life I remember doing a seminar in Canada. And I was leaving. Well, I was with Matrix. It's no big secret. Anybody could look up my background and see the companies that I was with. And I was only with a few because they stayed loyal. But somebody said to me, can I have a copy of your because you're leaving us. Can I have a copy of the presentation? I took the DVD out of the computer. I said, there you go. Do it. But people, they don't normally do that. And as a side note, if there's any educators on here watching, when you do a presentation, you shouldn't have 100% of your presentation. The PowerPoint isn't the shtick. You are. So if somebody said, yesterday, I don't think you were on Tuesdays with Joe, but I had a chemist on with it.
I popped on and I saw a little bit of that, but I couldn't watch the whole thing. I need to go back and watch the replay.
Oh, well, when you watched, you got to watch the replay twice. I mean, she was great. She took chemistry and broke it down. But again, my point is, without her, just having the presentation, it's not going to mean anything. And how I get a chemist like that on is 4 years ago when she started with TRI. We made a connection, and now she's helped me out about 3 times. So I don't want anybody out there to think you use people. I mean, the connection's got to be sincere. It's got to be true. I mean, I feel bad because the way I work, it doesn't allow me to be on a lot of these podcast and this, that, and a lot of things that I'm asked to do. Sometimes I have to say no. But the bottom line is, like, whatever you asked me for, you're on the inner circle for years. I would gladly, do whatever you needed to do or try to change my schedule to work for you. But again, connection. Last night I got a phone call. I was on, I don't even know if you know this. Did I tell you I was on QVC for 3 years? 98.
You did, because I was on there as well, and we talked about that.
Oh, there you
crazy
go, right.
that world is, yeah.
So I was dating one of the on-air hostesses at the time, and last night I got a phone call again for a podcast, and he said, by any chance, do you think you could talk to her and get her on? Because they wanted people that were outside of the professional beauty industry. I'm like, no problem. You know, I still kept it. We kept in touch all these years. So, I mean, the power of connection but the power of authenticity. How am I?
Authentic connection, not like, what can you give to me? Yeah.
Right. And sincere. You got to be sincere about it. You can't, and you got to be what you see. To me, it's got to be what you see, what you get when you do a program. When I do a program, if people meet us outside these programs, there's no surprises. We're the same people. And I love, by the way, when you were saying about, I don't even remember the young lady's name that spilled the drinks.
Lisa. She was a sales rep for back at the time. It was Shaineman that sent us to that Matrix show. So she's still in the business. She's with Wella now. Well,
Shaineman was my first house that actually my first show was called PJ and Company, which was Pat Johnson, who was the representative for Helene Curtis. But all that stuff was sanctioned by Shaineman Beauty Supply. So nice. Shaineman, I did more work for Shaineman probably when they were in business than any distributor. But Lisa, I enjoyed when people talk, because when they talk, you learn from somebody. I didn't care whether they were a hairdresser or whether they were a doctor or whether they were a trash man. I mean, I love I told you this before, the people that pick up my trash here, I'm good friends. I'll go down with bottles of water. Christmas time, I go down with money. I mean, you could learn something from anybody, and then you expand on it. When people say am I allowed to say Olaplex? No.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
When people say, how did you do what you did with Olaplex? It was making the parallels of talking to people all these years and we've talked about this before. You document and you journal so that you have some sort of benchmark to go by. And you know, at some point, everything just comes together and it molds into. It's like a jigsaw puzzle is my favorite metaphor, because I always felt like I spoke when I did a presentation. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. I might get a piece here and a piece here, but by the end of the conversation, you see how the whole picture lays out. And I pick that up on you too sometimes, but that comes from being authentic.
You know what? It's so true, because I never even know what the heck's going to come out of my mouth. But to your point, I remember I was going to teach my very first hair show, and I was so nervous, as anyone watching can imagine. You know, the number one fear above death is public speaking for most people. And we're going to remind me to come back to that, Joe, because I am so ADD. I want to talk about public speaking and being a platform artist while we're here. So, I'm on the plane. I'm by myself. I'm flying from Philadelphia to Orlando to do the show. And I picked up a book called Talk Like TED. And I read the entire book on the plane. It was a very short read. And it was talking about how the number 1, 2, and 3 of all time most watched and, you know, highly rated TED Talks were from people who told a story from a place of authenticity. They didn't have a PowerPoint. They didn't have dramatic music and videos in the background and this build up and all this. You know, some speakers can move you so much that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be a ballet dancer. You know, they tell a story and you're like, oh, you're transported somewhere. But sometimes it's too much fluff and too much over here and not enough meat and potatoes. So when you are telling a story and you're sharing information and you're so passionate about it, you don't need props and prompts and all that. And I always do like a disclaimer in the beginning of my classes. I'm like, guys, I am the ADD poster child, and I'm really excited to be here right now and talk to you about hair color. So I am going to be all over the place, but I want you to raise your hand and pull me back. Like, don't feel bad, because some people would come up at the end of class and they're like, oh my gosh, you were talking about that one situation. And I was like hanging on the edge of my seat and you never got to what happened in the end. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And then I finish it. So the authentic part is you're going to get the truth and you're going to get it from the heart, but it's also hard to stay on point and get everything in. So it's important to, like you said, bring that jigsaw puzzle together in the end and get to the great points that you wanted to share. So speaking of connection, I have a little surprise guest with us today that I did not tell you about, and I wanted to bring on to meet everyone. Oh. Your favorite redhead, of course, is here. Hello, Miss Donna.
All right, that is a great surprise. Let me tell you something. I would be calling her every day if I knew it wouldn't be bothering. And you too. Then I sent one of you a text going, I'm having withdrawal from the two of you.
Well, when I asked you to be on here, as soon as you said yes and it was confirmed, you sent me that text saying, oh my gosh, I just texted Donna and said, I miss talking to you girls. And I was like, all right, Donna, you're coming on at 10:15 and we're going to surprise him and we're both going to be here. So this is another power of connection. Joe reached out to me and is amazing and said, hey, I have an opening on my Tuesdays with Joe. Any chance you can be spontaneous? And it was the one I hardly ever have anything on a Tuesday morning. And I did. And it was a class that I was teaching at a beauty school. And I was like, I can't bail on the beauty school. I volunteered my time. I want to, be true to my word. So I had to say no and it killed me. But I was like, you know what? Donna would be amazing to fill this spot. And it's a great opportunity for her to meet Joe. The two of them connected and now they're having dates without me. So see what happens when you connect people, you can cut right out. Right out.
We aren't having dates. We are having working meetings. Let's put it that way. Actually, I do want to go to the sushi place. So for dinner after next week.
The sushi is really good there.
Exactly. Good to see you. I'm glad that was but that's all part of the connection. Let me tell you something. Elaine told you part of the story. The actual prompt for that was I had a guest on Tuesday with Joe. Lately, for some odd reason, I got to knock on some wood. Francesca fell and she had the radial fracture in her arm. The day Donna was on, I forget who had to, the chemist. The chemist had to cancel because they got a big testing project in. So Donna filled in and it was great. People loved the presentation. They loved you, Donna, just like they loved Elaine. You've been on twice already, I think, right? So it's
well, the beauty of what happened with Donna is Donna gets in her own head. She does not love doing these kind of things. So I force her to jump on these lives and I keep promising her that it gets easier and easier. So because she didn't have time to talk herself out of the opportunity and she didn't know you, right? So like now that she knows you, she'd be like, oh my God, 100%. But it's that fear of, I don't know him. Am I going to be judged? Am I going to talk about something interesting? Are people even going to care? And then you see how well it turned out. And nothing happens by mistake. That person that backed out, that was all meant to happen.
So it doesn't. I should buy a house in Ibiza now?
Yeah. Or at least just go visit. Go visit.
No, I have a buddy over. I was telling Donna, talk about the power of connection. He came over here and unfortunately he got involved with alcohol abuse. Ends up moving back. He was from Iceland originally. Ends up meeting his high school fiance, who happens to be one of the richest women in Spain. They end up getting married, and I'm hoping at some point, even when Don is over there, to make that connection because he's extremely interesting. He does a lot with Jane Goodall now. I think Jane Goodall passed away though.
That's the gorilla lady, right?
Pardon me?
That's the gorilla lady.
Exactly. They have, I forget how many acres. It's huge, but what they do is they're very animal oriented. When you go there, they adopt the mules that the people no longer want, dogs. They are just two great-hearted people, and if you ever saw them, you would never guess they're billionaires.
That's amazing. So speaking of billionaires, I want to formally introduce Donna to my followers of the coffee chat. Donna, again, back to the Lisa connection. This is crazy, and I didn't plan this. Lisa, who spilled the Bloody Mary on me that sat with Joe, Lisa asked me to work a table at a Shaineman beauty show. Her husband was creating a website. Now, this was way before the internet took off. Like nobody had computer. Donna and I think we're the only people who had computers in our salons at the time. And long time ago, I think before I even met you, Joe. And Donna came up to the table and I was just like the face of the brand. I didn't even know what the product was. They just needed somebody to man the booth. And it was a day that I had off and I said, sure. And Donna came up to the booth and we started chatting, and we got way off track of what I was supposed to be selling her because I'm terrible at sales. And we connected immediately. And she's like, here's my number. Get in touch with me. Let's get together. We've been friends ever since. She has helped me so much in reining in my non-structured business as a salon owner. She laughs at me. I'm like, oh, I just kind of make shit up as I go, fly by the seat of my pants. I have no charts, no spreadsheets. So I am fortunate enough to be in her Fierce Financials program right now. The way that I'm forcing her to get on lives and do these things, she's forcing me to stare down a spreadsheet and learn how to plug my numbers in and actually understand whether I make a living or not. So that is Donna's superpower, is numbers. So if you're watching and you are a sole proprietor in a salon, or you own a salon, or if you're anything like me and numbers just freak you out to no end, you really do. You know, Donna is a bonus module in my membership. So any of my members that are on here will tell you they have her bonus module on like digging deep into your numbers and understanding them. But you need somebody in your corner like that. And Joe, back to Joe, when I first met you at that show, I said to you, your photos of perms look unreal. Like, it's the most beautiful curl I've ever seen. I need to learn how to do that. And you were like, oh my gosh, you're, 20 minutes from my salon. Let's meet in my salon and I'll do a class for you. And you totally just volunteered to do it. You wouldn't take any money from me. It was me and two of my employees. Same thing with Donna. So that's why we're all still connected, because we genuinely care about the other person, and it's never about money. It's never like, oh, you give me this and I'll give you that. It's about friendship, connection, and having your superpower and sharing it with other people.
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about money, and then you told me to remind you, get back to public speaking and platform artists, but with money, and people laugh at me, but I believe in this, and I don't care what somebody believes in. If they believe in the universe, if they believe in God, if they believe in this, that, or the other, but you take 10% off the top and you give it away. And that has worked for me since I was 23. I was never in want for, when I say not in want for money, the times get bad, like 2008, 2009, when they got bad for everybody. Yeah, it hurt. And then, it would come roaring back. So I think people really have to take a look, like soul search, and find, what do you truly believe in? Because if it's about amassing money, you're never going to get it. And I think that's what's happened in the industry. Too many kids are going to school. They see we didn't have this advantage, by the way. Back in our day, it wasn't glamorous to become a hairstylist. It's now people see that, they see the Justin Andersons of the world, and they see, Tracy doing the beautiful work that Tracy does with all the celebrities. And they don't realize that's like the 0.0005% of the industry. So you got to if you put people first and you're generous with yourself and with your money, that all comes back to you. I mean, in my case, I can't even count how many times it's come back in a wonderful way. And I never look at it from that lens, but sometimes you got to sit back and go, man, in my case, go, thank you, God. This has been it's been an amazing run. So, and
Absolutely.
you, by the way, my favorite redhead, why are you nervous? You present unbelievably. I mean, there is, and I don't know how, I've never asked Elaine this, I don't think, but whether I'm doing something like this morning, whether I'm going on stage in front of 5,000 people, or whether I'm just talking to a couple people, but it's about business or this, there's a certain amount of tension that's there, but that tension is what motivates you to work through it. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm just like with your studio in Doylestown, I'm trying to get a studio down here, mainly for product testing. I want all my equipment the hell out of my house. I want to be able to come home and not look at anything that has to do with work. But the young lady that's actually going to use the studio to do hair in, so it will be licensed as a salon, she's like, she's nervous about everything. And I'm trying to tell her, nothing good, number one, is accomplished in your comfort zone, as trite as that cliche is too. And the other thing is you got to have patience. You can't, when you put in, I got the application sitting right here, a use and occupancy permit. If they tell you it's going to take 2 weeks, then it's 2 weeks. You know, all the worrying and all the bitching in the world is not going to help that.
Isn't going to help. Yeah.
Really faster. But you do a marvelous job, both of you, presenting. I think it's off the hook.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'm getting more comfortable. Definitely getting more comfortable. It's a process. I'd like to speak, one-on-one, and the relationship part I like a lot. Getting through the camera, I think COVID has kind of pushed everybody there, whether you're in your comfort zone or not. If you want to communicate and connect with people, this is kind of the way to connect. So it's a good time for me, I guess, that way.
Well, it was a great surprise too, Elaine. I loved it. I'm in between.
I'm not good at secrets either.
It's the thorn in between two roses because you're on each side of me.
You're having a girl sandwich right now.
That's my pleasure. Anyhow, the platform artist thing is interesting because now, to Donna's point, it's going to be very interesting to see. I was used to, traveling over 100,000 air miles a year, being live on stage. I personally dislike all of this computer, camera, and everything else because it's very tough to make the connection. But I think we're going to have a whole generation now that this is going to, I think, I could be wrong, this is going to be more the norm than the future. I mean, this coming Monday, I do another show, which people charge for, that blows my mind too, that people are actually paying for virtual shows. And I just pray that they're getting value out of that virtual show. But I haven't really seen any feedback on any of this.
Yeah, I honestly think, I mean, of course, I do virtual education for a living. So, of course, I'm going to say it's fabulous. And I've made such great connections and such progress with my members because they tried it. I said, just try, in the beginning, I'm like, just try it for a month. If you don't feel like you're getting the same value as going to an in-person class, just drop out and quit. You didn't lose anything. Just give it a shot. So the pros of it are, I have students from Australia, Ireland, Poland. I could never get them all together live in the same place without costing people thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's the one big pro, is that people can show up as they are from wherever they are with an internet connection. The connection of the people taking the class with each other, I think, is so much better virtually than in person, to the point of what we talked about. You see that person in the show and you're like, oh, I would love to go say hello to her, but she's not going to be nice because everybody's in line waiting to get a picture with her and I don't want to bother her. And people are intimidated, where when I put them into groups, when we do something on Zoom and I hit the breakout room and people get into groups of 3, I then see them. I'll see them on your page, Joe, like Tuesdays with Joe. I'll see them talking to each other. I'm like, that is so cool. They met on my live. And one's from California and one's from Maryland. They never met each other. And now they're like, hey, girl, how was your vacation? Like, COVID, we all would have been so devastated had we not had this ability for me to interview both of you for the podcast, to have you on the coffee chat, for me to be on your Olaplex users, for me to take Donna's class and meet those people. And it's funny because, as is in person, there's always the introverts that have their camera off. You see the black screen with their name. And I'll keep saying, if you feel comfortable, we're not judging if you have makeup on or you're in your pajamas. Like, don't worry about it. It's all about connecting with each other. We've all been there, where we're on a Zoom, in our PJs with our hair looking crazy, and no one cares. No one cares. They're there for the connection. So I'll pull it out of them and make them turn their camera on. And then I'll get a message, an hour after it ends saying, thank you. I connected so much better in the breakout when my camera was on, because people don't want to look at a black screen and be like, oh, Elaine Travis, what do you do? Black screen, they want that face-to-face connection. So I think it can be the best of both worlds, but there's nothing like, an in-person hug and connection and sitting like Donna. Donna loves to crunch numbers and meet with someone in person in a cool cafe and do that one-to-one FaceTime. And that's what makes her
off the ledge. So I can keep pulling them back off the ledge.
For sure. And that's the way you are. You know what I mean? That's just who you are. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it's nice to be able to continue to give that one-to-one service, but be able to do it when, you might be in 27 degrees and somebody else is in 90 degrees and, sitting out on their porch talking to you. So it's just amazing. I mean, we're so blessed to be able to connect in this time of no connection and no social and all of the.
And I agree with you. I think part of it, and sometimes I have to look in the mirror and go, you were so used to, you have to remember 46 years now or whatever, doing it one way. So now sometimes I got to look in the mirror and go, you're just being closed-minded, with all this change, because I've always liked change. This is just something that, like with hair, I'll give you an example with hair cutting for me. I'm very visual. I would go once a year to an outside school, mainly, and it's a shame that Sassoon's closed because
I know, it's the best.
was my favorite.
Me too.
So now everybody's doing this via a screen, but when I stop and think about the hair cutting schools where you are in person, and they're saying, no, your hands have to go this way and your body position is this way. It's just, don't worry, us old dogs will get used to it. We'll see how it. But
you've done amazing, Joe. You didn't duck out when it became this. You stayed, you have glitches with your, when you were on with Donna, it froze a couple times and Donna just sat and waited for it to unfreeze and stayed calm. And it's just everyone watching has been on a frozen FaceTime with a family member. They've been on a frozen Zoom call. They're not judging that it's frozen. If anything, they're judging your internet provider and not you. So I think like getting so caught up in like perfection, it's just like in-person things. I was doing a show and I had a jumpsuit on, like a little romper, and I'm up on the stage and this girl keeps staring at what appears to be my crotch, the entire time. So it's like a little break in between. And I look at my daughter and I'm like, is there something going? Like, I thought maybe, that my friend showed up and I didn't know it. And there was something embarrassing. Like, did I have something hanging out of there? Like, what the hell's going on with my crotch? So my daughter's like, no, are you sure? She's like, yeah. So, and then when you have that person, you can't not look at them. You keep going back to them to see what is wrong with what I'm saying. Why do you have that look on your face? So I'm like talking to everybody and go back to her, talk to everybody, go back to her. So class ends, everybody's coming up, they're buying books. Oh my gosh, take a picture. This was great. Oh, la, la, la. I'm having fun, hugging everybody. And she sits there. She doesn't get out of her chair. And she still has that look. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is with this girl? So she waits for everybody to leave and she walks up to me and she's got tears coming down her face. And she's like, I came to this class because I was going to quit doing hair. I'm so confused by hair color. I don't understand any of it. And what you just said in this class, I totally just get it. Like you said it in a way that it made sense to me. And I finally get it. Can I take a picture with you? I'm like, here I am thinking I have camel toe for the whole 90-minute presentation. And that she's staring at my crotch because there's something wrong. And she was like leaning in. She loved what she was hearing. But this is what we do. We tell ourselves a story like there's something in my tooth. There's, something hanging out of my nose. My hair's sticking up. I have lipstick on my tooth. Like this is all us in our head thinking we're not good enough. We're not enough. We're not providing value, and having a friend like me that's going to push her to get on camera, she's going to push me at the end of the year to know how much freaking money I make. And do I make any money? Because I give everything away. So she yells at me all the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, they needed help. I'm not going to charge. And she's like, girl, you've been doing this way too long to keep giving stuff away. So there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Like Joe, you gave me that class and you wouldn't take any money. And Donna's done things for me and wouldn't take any money. I've done things for her and didn't take any money. Like, there's a balance. It's not do your family's hair every single, month for the rest of your life. You can do it once in a while, but there always has to be that ebb and flow and that give and take. And that's what makes the world go. So we're getting a lot of great comments from people. Let me see if there's any questions for you lovely people. Donna Hogg, here, we'll share this. This is good for you, Donna. She said, that's reassuring to me that they don't want as accomplished someone. I think she's saying someone as accomplished as Donna gets nervous about video and live. So Donna Hogg is starting to teach virtually. And Donna was in the membership for me. She's been on the coffee chat and she's a plethora of knowledge of chemistry. She's teaching at a beauty school. I had no idea that she was in the service. We talked about that. And she was like, 3 hots and a cot and all that. And I learned so much about her. And she was stressed to the max about the virtual, the connection with the computer. I'm like, girl, don't worry about that. Like, that's the easy, or hire a high school kid to stick a camera in your face. They love all that stuff.
She's one of ours, Elaine.
Yes, I know. And she's
anybody, any of our IT, some of the kids like Tiffany Kathleen with IT is amazing. I go to one of the more youthful people in the organization, and they do. But Don and I have been friends since she came on board. I mean, she came on board, I want to say we had about the second or third wave of advocates that came into the company. She's wonderful. And when she does do a chemistry class, the visual aids that she comes up with, she's very, very creative and very down to earth. And yeah, I didn't know until our first, what's called an Olaplex holiday, that she was in the service. It was amazing. I went to her. I was doing a show in, I think it was Dallas. And she said, would you stay an extra day to do a class at the school? So I went out to school. Yeah, I stayed. Well, nobody's got to beg me to stay an extra day in Texas. I love Texas.
Isn't Texas great? They're so friendly.
It's great all the way around. It's great. I love the food in terms of, quote, specifically meat. And I don't eat that much red meat, but when I go to an area that's known for red meat, I eat red meat. And her school was great. The kids are great. She genuinely, what would the word be? She turns herself inside out for her students, because a lot of her students could either be financially challenged or have some other issues. It seems to be, anytime I've spoken to her, that's the student they get, is to get people out of a certain economic bracket they're in and make it so that they can create their own living for themselves. So she goes far and beyond the normal beauty school teacher that you would find in a suburb like this, for example.
Oh, I'm going to reach out to her. I have some things for those girls. That's cool.
There you go.
Thanks.
Definitely. So Donna, what would be your number one tip for people watching just to get started with doing things a little bit different financially, to really understand? I mean, for me, the first thing that pops into my mind is the way that people set their prices. Like, you helped me so much with charging extra for glazing the ends, charging extra for things that I was like, oh, I didn't even think to charge for that. But what would be your top tip?
Top tip for money around the industry, or as a professional behind the chair?
Either.
Okay.
Because I have a mix of everything here. There's owners, there's stylists, there's suite runners.
Top tip. I have too many top tips, but I guess for the salon owner, I think it's important for them themselves to understand what it looks like for growth in the way of, your benchmarks, your productivity, your benchmarks, retention, pre-book. For the owner to understand that is super important, because this is what drives our business. But then the second caveat of that is, how do you educate and communicate with your team so that they can accomplish those results without looking at the numbers? So I think this is a shortcoming that happens a lot in the industry, is we go to our team and say, you're at 60% retention. What is your goal? And they're like, I don't know, 70. They just assume that the number should go up, and they just kind of randomly pick a number. But if you can start at the foundation of that with the education behind it of, retention is when a client returns back to your chair. What are some of the things that you can utilize to have your clients come back either more frequently or get scheduled before they leave? And that's all in the conversation and communication. So I think it's the owner's responsibility to understand the numbers and the drivers, but then it's also the owner's responsibility to be able to educate and inspire their team in the way that it's about communication and client service. So that would be like my first thing that like jumps in my head, because that's for both of them, and saving money like from day one.
Can I share some of the Will-isms?
Sure, of course.
I mean, I know that's a paid group. I don't want to overstep, but Donna had a guest in one of our classes, and her fierce financials program, and she didn't warn me that he was hot. So I showed up with no makeup on, to the point of me saying, just show up as you are. So when I asked a question, I'm like, Will, you're hot. I apologize for my lack of makeup and hair, but I'm going to ask my question anyway. And I turned him purple, as I do to everyone that I meet. But it was such simple advice, but it's like in my head every day now from that point on, is the buckets, the 3 bucket system. It's so simple. But COVID, if we learned nothing from COVID, it was to be prepared and have that cushion of, liquid money that you can get to. Not in a home that you own, not in a CD or a stock or a bond, like physical money you can get to is your first bucket. So 3 to 6 months to be able to pay every one of your expenses, your utilities, your rent, your car, your everything, so that you're not going broke for at least 3 months, preferably 6 months. And then when that bucket is completely filled and staying filled, then you can start to do bucket number 2, which is more of a long-term strategy, a CD, a little higher rate interest, but it's locked up for a little longer. And then, of course, bucket 3 is you're so flush that you have all this extra money. I don't know what that feels like. But when you get to that point, bucket 3 is when you can play around with getting some stock, getting some, he didn't recommend Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is a thing you could gamble on. He said it's like going to the casino. Right. But it's like people don't know what to do. And most people don't have their own financial advisor. I was in Clubhouse. Is anybody on Clubhouse besides me and Donna? Joe, I sent you an invitation. Did you get it?
I think Donna had sent it first or whatever.
Oh, really? I was Donna first.
You used to invite Joe.
Sorry, I'm interrupting this relationship with my invitation.
He means the other Donna.
Wait, let me ask you a question. When people, once you're on, right? You don't respond to all the invites.
No,
right?
no. Okay. I was giving you one of my precious I had one and was offering it to you.
Oh my God.
I think they were like 20 grand on $20,000.
People are buying those invitations, Joe Santy.
Oh my God.
Anyway, now all kidding aside, I was on Clubhouse and, listening in on conversations, and people are getting more risky before they're ready to be. They don't have that cushion, they don't have that bucket number 1, and it's like the FOMO, like you hear about, people are buying stock in this and let me do that, and it's like, well, you need to be able to pay your mortgage and not be homeless when, God forbid, something like this happens again. For us, it's such a physical job. A broken arm, something as simple as a broken finger. Like I've had stylists take off almost a digit of their finger cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And from Thanksgiving to January 1st, you make the most amount of money in your entire year as a stylist. Mm-hmm. So that put her right out of commission. So do you have short-term disability? Do you have long-term disability? Do you have any disability? Do you have any type of savings, any type of insurance? So as boring and awful as those conversations are, Donna manages to make it more interesting. Like my daughter and I both, we were in Ibiza learning from Donna, and it still was painful. I was like, girl, there are cliffs out there that we need to go take pictures of. Stop trying to make me look at spreadsheets. So even though it was a beautiful surrounding and she's amazing, I still was like, I was trying to avoid her and the numbers, and she was trying to avoid me and the online stuff. Like it was like the ultimate avoidance dance. But that's what we do, right? Whatever we're comfortable in, we want to keep, going to. But Bryn is a totally different person. For those of you who don't know, Bryn is my daughter. She now has my salon, and she grew up with me as her mother. So I was not Miss Spreadsheet and structure. She has always been more structured than me, and she can rock a spreadsheet like nobody's business. So she connects to Donna in a different way, where she's like, oh, this is my zone of genius. Like now you're speaking my language. So everybody has some weak link in their career that's something that they choose to avoid. But you hire somebody for that, hire somebody to do your spreadsheets and do the things that you hate to do, but don't not do them is basically the.
But I think that's a really good point. We do in our industry hire other people to do this for us all the time. And I think that the people have this huge fear around their own money as long as they're paying their bills. And as long as they feel like everything is getting paid, they feel like they're doing okay. And I think it's like self-love. When you're taking care of your money, you're self-loving yourself or your children or your spouse or whatever. And that's what's really important. It's like, we're talking about buckets here just out loud. And I think that people sit back and go, well, where am I getting how am I even doing that? How am I even saving for a bucket? Like, where does that go? What kind of account does it go in? What does it look like? How much is it? People have so many questions. It's like us as hairdressers, when we're doing the hair, it's something that people don't learn in school. And money is one of those other things. We might have taken a home economics class that teaches you how to balance a checkbook, but they don't really teach you how to save for your future, what it looks like, how simplified it could be. And that's the important things. It's just this little tiny nugget that can really make a big difference for somebody in the future. So this is what I love about it, is like the give back of that, watching people find money or realizing money that they didn't know how to do it before. It's like us as hairdressers doing our client, and the client going, oh my God, nobody ever taught me how to just blow dry my hair. It's like that. So that's what I feel about the money part for somebody.
Well, and you know what happens just organically as a result of that conversation, I find myself, I was in a routine of when I go for my walk, I stop and I pay $5 for coffee and walk back with the coffee. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to walk faster because I want that coffee. So I walk faster, I walk longer, and I go home and I make my damn coffee because I want more money in that bucket. Yeah. So that $5, and that's a hairdresser thing. How many times do you do the Starbucks run and be like, it's on me? And you think that that's, because you get cash gratuities, which God, do I miss that? Not being behind the chair. I miss having cash. I have no cash. So you get that, you run to Starbucks and it's $30 and you do that, 5 times a month. There's your bucket of money that, you just didn't even think about. Just that quick, that glass of wine after work with everybody and grabbing an appetizer, all of a sudden it's $50. So when you get serious about filling that first bucket, you almost become like addicted to it growing. You want to watch it grow.
Yeah, people do.
So I love that. So Joe, we have a comment for you from Michael Embleton. I would love to connect with Joe as I do a lot of perms. I import the American Wave from Nick Arrojo. So Joe's the perm queen. Did you see the adorable Juliana Hough, who's so gorgeous? She makes me want to like women. You did an amazing job because she was totally blonde when you permed her. So that was like a true feat.
But believe me, I was nervous doing that, but as long as the hair has elasticity and it's not mushy when it's wet, it'll take a perm. That's the other disheartening thing when you read in a lot of forums and somebody says, oh, I want to perm Elaine's hair. And you have 90 people going, run as fast as you can. Don't do it, blah, blah, blah. But Michael, where's Michael from that he imports the American Wave from? Nick?
I think the UK.
Oh.
Because, yeah.
Michael, just joe@olaplex.com.
Yeah, Joe is very approachable. Don't be afraid of Joe. So let's see what else is going on here. Amy says sharing is caring. This is one of my famous lines, and this is one of my members, Robin, who I think Donna, I think you know her too. She's from
Get Me Mad.
Ask Calls Get Me Mad. So I always say to my members, I love you. I'm here for you. I am always going to answer you when you ask me a question. Someone will send a photo and they'll be like, this is my client now. This is what she wants. I'm nervous. What do you think? And at first, I'm trying to be a good teacher and teach people how to fish and not just feed them fish so that they don't know what's going on next. So I let the other members jump in. So they jump in and like, oh, I would do this. Make sure you do that. And of course, all the answers are different because that's the beauty of what we do is there's more than one way to get there. So I let them all answer. And then I jump in and I say, tell me what you were thinking that you were going to do first. Like, I want to hear what direction you were thinking on your own. And then I keep asking questions back and forth until we come to the point together of what, I'm encouraging them to do, but they're getting there on their own. And then 2 days later, I'll reach out and say, hey, how did that go? I want to see the picture. And they're like, oh, it didn't go well at all. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I give bad advice? I'm feeling all bad about myself. And they're like, well, no, I didn't do that. I did XYZ because that's what I always did. And I just felt, and I'm like, but that's what you always did. So, the point of asking and the point of being in a membership like mine or like going to Joe for a perm class or going to Donna for money advice, it's like you were in pain. So because you're in pain, you wanted the pain to go away and you went to someone who's a little bit further ahead of you that's willing to share with you to help, reach down and lift you up and get you to where you're going. But when that fear steps in and you do the same thing that you always did, you're going to be on that cycle, on that hamster wheel. So that's when I get mean and say, don't be an asshole.
Donna, only because I don't think we ever talked about this, but back in the day, I used to have to do, I would call them lifestyle seminars, because it would be a combination of what both of you are talking about. So my formula that I would share back in the day, that, I mean, now, thank God, I don't have to worry about anything like that. But I would tell people, if you live off of 70% of your money, give away 10% in a tithe, 10%, especially when you're a young stylist, 10% should go towards self-improvement. And then the other 10% would be FU money. So,
That's awesome.
whatever you want. But I found that if people could do that's one of the problems, Elaine, too, is that when we got those tips, people never included them in their income. A lot of people, that was almost like, well, it's tips, it's cash. Yeah, but that's still part of the overall income.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I had a mentor really early on, one of my girlfriends that I'm still friends with today too. And I might have met her at like 19 or 20 years old, and she was a stylist out on the West Coast. And she taught me very early on, save your tips, because she would put all of her tips literally in a shoebox in her closet. And the things that she would buy with her tips later, I saw the value in saving the money for her to accomplish a goal. So it could have been a trip somewhere. It could have been a bedroom set. It could have been like, it wasn't these like little things. And I was like, how are you buying all these things? She goes, I saved my tips. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, buy all of this just from your tips? And she's like, yeah, I just save my tips. They go in this box, and this money, she compartmentalized it. So I learned this, like I said, as a mentor, she would compartmentalize her money. This money that I take goes here for this. This money that I take goes here for this. And, so
now, if only she made a book before Michalowicz with the Profit First system. That's what the Profit First system is. Having something as basic as envelopes. This is my utility envelope. This is my mortgage envelope. This is and you put everything into what it's, for, and all of a sudden you're not blowing that money on trivial things that, 2 months from now, you're going to forget you even.
Spreadsheets are for today. You don't need envelopes anymore. You just need a couple spreadsheet pockets.
No.
Yeah. No. Well, you don't have the cash to put in the envelope anymore, so you have to use.
I know. Well, back to cash. My big business plan. I opened my salon. I was 22, and I knew I wanted to open a salon. And I knew, like, I had that dream. I had all the stuff, and I had this little tiny 400 square foot space that was not zoned commercial. So I always say I went to school at the School of Hard Knocks instead of college. I had to figure it out. So I called like my councilwoman from the neighborhood, and I said, how do I turn this space into commercial? And she was like, oh, you got to call this one. You got to go knock door to your neighbors and get them to sign that they're okay with it. Went through all of that. And then I was like, all right, well, now I need money for furniture and paint and stations, all that stuff. So this guy came to my house, and I remember his face like it was yesterday, and it was 35 years ago. He sits at my kitchen table. My parents are there. It's this round wooden table. And he's like, okay, so what's your budget? What's your, let me look at your business plan. I'm like, business plan? What's that? He's like, your numbers, like how, and I was like, no. And I get that it was like, almost like a there's cheesy tubs with I know you don't eat that kind of food, but when kids like those little orange cheesies, picture an empty plastic tub with crunched up $20 bills from bartending. I got a bartending job when I knew I wanted a salon. And every night I came home from the bartending job and put these stinky, smelly bills into this can. So this poor guy's sitting there with this 22-year-old, like, I'm opening a business. And I went like this, shook the money out on the table, and he's helping me flatten out all the bills. And that's how we came up with how much furniture that I could afford. And here I am, 30 years later, I still own a business, and I've always managed to succeed in spite of my scrappiness. So there's just different styles. Some people overthink it to the point where they don't do it. That's not me. I do it rough and jagged edges, but I get there eventually. And then I can polish it up a little bit with having friends like you that straighten me out and get me in line to polish it up. But everybody has a superpower. So I love having both of you here. And I love that, all of our superpowers are different, but we all, help each other and connect with each other as much as we possibly can. Real quick, because I don't want to, we're already almost at an hour, and I usually do a half hour for these, but we still have people still here enjoying it. tell me about the two of you connecting with the art. I want people to hear about how like that reignited Joe's passion for getting into some art.
So Joe and I are getting together next week. So Joe, I guess Joe liked the art on the page, right? You saw some of the art on my page. So I do art talking about give back. So I make my art and I sell it. And all the money that I sell it for goes to Namibia when I go back to Namibia every year in Africa to feed the tribe, the Sam tribe. So I guess Joe had seen some of my stuff. And then when we got on the call, he was showing me some of his art in his house and he's into it. So next week he's coming here for a business lunch, but we're going to do a little bit of art too. I have a little art project that I thought would be fun to make with him because you said you haven't made a piece yet, right, Joe?
No. I had my daughter sign up with me for when she was younger for a drawing class. And it was funny because she's just a natural. I can make like a little, here's my drawing of a man.
He's going to cancel on me the night before now that I told him we're doing art.
Well, you know me, my wheels are spinning and I'm thinking, why don't you guys do it live for all of us? Like how great of an opportunity to watch Joe get a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, like Donna is going to be at her best and not uncomfortable and Joe's going to be uncomfortable. So to see you stepping out of your comfort zone, I would love for you to go live with that if you're comfortable.
Maybe if there's maybe if your daughter or your assistant are there, they could film it. And then we could put it up live. I won't be able to get up there until we're doing it Tuesday, I believe. So I won't be able to leave here for Doylestown till after Tuesdays with Joe. There's another chemist on, but I will gladly. We could film. Maybe we could put it on a tripod.
Film it.
I have no problem. I've been in many uncomfortable situations. Most of the stuff that I do is outside my comfort zone. So it's, you just do it. Will the audience get a laugh? Of course, but we'll take it.
Of course. Yeah, I think you should. I'm going to stay tuned for that.
Well, actually, I was more when you were saying how I got in. I loved Donna's artwork, the art that I like Fazzinos. So if somebody doesn't know what they are, you just put Charles Fazzino in a search engine and you'll see it. But the colors that Donna picks, which are very vibrant, and the way the shapes are drawn in her artwork, it just reminded me of some of the stuff I have hanging on the walls here. Yeah, I appreciate anybody that can do art. If I took you to my office right now and opened the door, you would see easels and the rest of that have never been out of boxes because I actually had to throw away paints that I bought when my daughter was in second grade, acrylics, Donna, that when I moved to this house from the other house, I threw away a ton. The boxes were never open.
Your intentions are there. The intentions.
Exactly.
Well, but see, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they always say. It's just something that, aside from squeezing out a tube of color and blopping it on a canvas, it would never. I actually donated the canvases I had a few canvases, or not a few, about a couple dozen that I gave to a charter school.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with talking about the ultimate discomfort and what I told you to remind me because I'm ADD. I am hosting an event in April. It's going to be April 25th called Platform Artist Protege. And I talked about it a little bit on this coffee chat for those people who tune in regularly. I am offering an opportunity for anyone who has always felt that call to, I want to get up on stage, I want to teach, I want to get started. Donna Hogg is a perfect example. Stepping out of your comfort zone and putting yourself out there. It's a great little first step into doing it. So step one is, I'll put a link up after we finish here. Step one is sending in a 3 to 5 minute video just from your phone of you presenting something. So it could be Joe doing his, art at Donna's. It could be Donna talking about Fierce Financials. It could be about anything, but just showing you as a teacher, 3 to 5 minute video. And then we're going to have your peers vote. We're going to narrow it down to the top 10 from that first round. And then we're randomly connecting the top 10 with coaches that have all been platform artists in the industry. We have Vivian McKinder, Beth Minardi, Karen Gordon. My gosh, who else do we have? London Curtis, there's 10 judges. Of course, I'm going blank, but they're all phenomenal people who have been platform. Oh, Mary and Philip Wilson. They both want to do separate candidates, which is fun. They're usually a Sonny and Cher team, but they're each doing a different, they're going to compete against each other. So the winner of the competition gets to teach at Chicago Beauty Show, which is a really tough show to get into. So that's exciting. And Chicago's going to pay for 2 nights hotel and give them tickets, of course, to the show. And then the winning coach also gets 2 tickets to the show and 2 nights accommodation. So I just thought it would be fun to do like an American Idol / Voice type thing, because, you know, when I was starting out trying to teach, I had no idea where to begin. And Joe, I sat in on your public speaking class and I sat in on other public speaking classes, and it just felt like such a giant goal and how do I even get started? And I want to be that connector for those people to get them out of their comfort zone and into this event. So if anybody is feeling called to try it out, I hope that you will. You have nothing to lose. Absolutely.
So I just need to send a 3 to 5 minute video to.
I already asked you. You already blew me off on that one. But yeah, I definitely, because what's going to happen is the coaches, once you get past that initial nervousness, the coaches are going to, you know, do a Zoom workshop with you and say, you know, you fidgeted with your hands too much, or you said too many ums, all the things that everyone does when they're doing public speaking out of nerves. So I think it'll be fun. So I just wanted to get that little plug in there at the end for anybody we're going to start really promoting it now. Like we're supposed to start March 1st. We're a couple days behind. So be on the lookout for Platform Artist Protege.
That's what I love about you two. The ideas that flow between you two are incredible. That's a great idea, actually.
Well, we're gonna have you helping out. You're gonna help me promote it. So you're awesome. Thank you guys. This is fun. We need to do this more often. But
there you go.
Go ahead.
Sounds good.
You said I'm gonna help you out even more. I'm not gonna stop you. How are you helping me out?
Oh, no. I have you're talking about the hands fidgeting and the ums and the ahs. A program that I have that I'll convert it to PDF and send to you was all about how to research. So you get, you know, it's important to know how to present, but it's also important to get your material online too. So you could take it for what it's worth, my love, and run with it.
Yeah, send it to me, because what I'll do is I'll chop it into little things and we'll do that as like a trailer for the event. Awesome. Well, thank you, my friends. I'm so happy that you came into my life in each way, each individual way, and for the longest time. I've known both of you longer than most people that I've known in my life, and I cherish our friendship. So thank you for doing this. Thank you, Power Company, for putting my power back on this morning and letting this happen. So I will talk to both of you soon. And everyone, thank you for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this, please share it with other hairstylists. You know, if you make it onto my YouTube, please click the subscribe button, because my coffee chats also go onto my YouTube. So if you're ever on the treadmill and you just want a little cup of coffee and inspiration, I'm always there. Joe's there every Tuesday on the Olaplex users, giving inspiration, having special guests. And at some point, Donna is going to be somewhere giving financial advice on the regular. So thank you all for being here, and thanks for watching. Everyone have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Donna. Bye, guys.
See you next week.
Looking forward to it.